Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling project management, but not in the typical way. We're going to go beyond Gantt charts and deadlines. And for that, we have our expert.
That's correct.
And you've sent us some really interesting stuff, including some pieces from a CPM exam prep book. So it seems like you're either gearing up for the exam yourself or you're really interested in getting a solid grasp of project management.
It's a fascinating field for sure.
Yeah. So let's dive into this. I think we've all heard the term project management, but how would you explain it? Like, how would you explain it in a way that connects with someone who's maybe feeling totally overwhelmed by a big project?
Imagine you have this massive to-do list and it just feels like this mountain that you're never going to be able to climb. Project management is um, it's like having a Sherpa guide, a set of tools and a map to help you break that mountain down into manageable steps.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making a plan, managing your time and resources wisely, and ultimately conquering that challenge without losing your sanity.
Okay, I love that analogy. That's great. I think that makes it so much more relatable than just reciting a textbook definition. And it's interesting, too, because you mentioned that these principles can apply even outside of traditional work projects, right? Like the book even uses an example of, wait for it, maple syrup production to illustrate this.
Yeah, it's true. Even something as seemingly straightforward as fixing a recurring product defect on a maple syrup production line, that actually involves project management thinking. You've got to define the problem, gather some data, come up with a solution, implement it, and then monitor to see if it worked. So it's like a mini project in itself.
So it's like project management is kind of hiding in plain sight in so many areas of life. It's not just these giant corporations or construction sites.
Exactly. Think about a car dealership, right? They're customizing a vehicle for specific clients, so that's not their standard operating procedure. It's a project with its own unique requirements and challenges. And guess what? The principles of project management can help to make sure the customer drives off happy with exactly what they wanted.
Okay, so now I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together. So we've got individual projects, but then there are also portfolios and programs. How does all of this work together? Like in a business setting, the book mentions it's like an ecosystem, but that sounds a bit abstract to me.
Okay, let's break it down. Imagine a big tech company. They might have a portfolio of different product lines,
Yeah.
right? And within each product line, there might be programs focusing on specific areas of development or improvement. And then each program is made up of individual projects, right? So you might have a project team working on a new feature for a social media platform, which is part of a larger program to enhance user engagement, which in turn falls under the company's overall portfolio of digital products.
So it's kind of like a hierarchy. Each project is like a piece of a larger puzzle.
Precisely. And all these elements, the portfolios, programs, and projects, they need to be aligned with the organization's overall strategy and goals. So it's not just about managing individual projects in isolation. It's about making sure they all contribute to the big picture.
Okay, now I'm starting to see the strategic importance of all of this. So let's get down to some of the core concepts that everyone needs to know. So the prep book talks a lot about constraints. What exactly are those, and why are they such a big deal in project management?
Think of constraints like boundaries that you have to operate within. So typically we're talking about time, cost, and scope. You only have so much time to complete the project, you have a limited budget, and you have a specific scope of work that needs to be done. The challenge is that these constraints are often competing with each other.
Right, like if you try to cram more work into the same time frame, you might just totally blow the budget. So the book actually uses a fun example. It's of planning a holiday party to illustrate this. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you're hosting this big holiday party for all your friends and family, right? You've got a limited budget, you have a set date, and you want to make sure everyone has a great time. So those are your constraints. Now imagine you want to add a fancy ice sculpture to the decor. So that's going to impact your budget, right? So do you cut back on food to afford it? Or do you push the party back a week to try to save up? Or do you just accept that the ice sculpture is outside the scope of what's possible with your current constraints?
So it's all about making trade-offs and prioritizing what's most important. That's where the concept of ranking comes in, right? The book talks about how you might prioritize cost over schedule or quality over scope.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting because the way that you rank those constraints is going to be unique to your specific situation. So think about your own life. Are you someone who is hyper-focused on deadlines, even if it means spending a little more? Or are you more flexible on the timeline, but you have a strict budget that you can't exceed?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm already starting to see how I could apply this to my own projects, so this is great. But there's another piece to this puzzle that we haven't touched on yet, and that's risk. I mean, let's be honest, things don't always go according to plan.
You're absolutely right, and that's why risk management is such a crucial part of project management. So remember that holiday party example. What if a snowstorm hits on the day of the party? What if your caterer cancels at the last minute? These are all potential risks that could just totally derail your plans.
So it's not just about crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. You need to be actively thinking about what could go wrong and actually planning for it.
Exactly. And that's where project management really helps you avoid feeling overwhelmed by those what ifs. So instead of just worrying about them, you can actually plan for them. So maybe you have a backup caterer on standby, or maybe you have a plan for entertaining guests indoors if the weather just, totally turns bad. So by identifying those potential risks and developing those contingency plans, you can significantly reduce the chances of those risks turning into just major problems.
Okay, I'm already feeling less anxious just thinking about this, but there's one thing I'm still a bit fuzzy on, and that's the difference between business analysis and project management. I mean, they seem kind of intertwined, but what exactly sets them apart?
That's a great question, and it's something that often trips people up. Think of it this way. Business analysis is all about defining the need or opportunity. It's about figuring out the why behind a project. So, for example, a business analyst might conduct market research to determine if there's a demand for a new product or service. Or they might analyze an existing business process to try to identify areas for improvement. Once that need or opportunity is clearly defined, then project management takes over.
So the business analyst is like the detective, gathering all the clues and figuring out what needs to be done. And then the project manager is like the architect. They come in and take those findings and actually design a plan to make it happen.
I like that analogy. It captures the essence of the relationship. Business analysis really lays the groundwork, providing the insights and justification for a project. And then project management takes those insights and turns them into a tangible plan with specific objectives, timelines, and resources.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So it's like a relay race with business analysis kind of passing the baton to project management to take it to the finish line. Now, I know that you mentioned that the CAPM exam is a big focus of the materials that you sent us. So could you just tell us a little bit more about who this exam is for and why someone might want to take it?
The CAPM, or Certified Associate in Project Management, it's a globally recognized certification offered by the Project Management Institute, and it's a great entry point for anyone who's new to project management or looking to formalize their skills. So it demonstrates that you have a solid understanding of the core principles and best practices.
Okay, so even if you're not planning to become like a full-fledged project manager, this certification could still be valuable. Like if you're in a role where you're involved in projects but it's not your primary responsibility, could the CAPM still give you an edge?
Absolutely. I mean, the skills you learn while you're preparing for the CAPM exam are applicable to so many different roles and industries. I mean, think about it. Almost every job involves some element of project management, right? Whether you're organizing a marketing campaign, planning a product launch, or even just trying to streamline a process, the principles of project management can really help you be more effective and efficient.
That's really helpful. It makes me think that even if someone's not specifically aiming for a project management career, the CAPM could be a great way to boost their resume and it would demonstrate their ability to handle complex tasks, that kind of thing. But let's get back to the practical side of things for a minute. The book highlights some key skills that are emphasized in the CAPM exam, and I'm kind of curious to hear more about them. For example, it mentions emotional intelligence, or EQ. Why is that so important for project managers? Seems like a bit of a soft skill, right?
You'd be surprised how crucial it is. So project management is about more than just following a plan. It's about leading people, right? You're constantly interacting with stakeholders, managing team dynamics, and you're navigating complex situations. So emotional intelligence allows you to understand and manage those interpersonal relationships effectively.
So it's not just about being technically savvy, it's about being able to read the room, so to speak.
Exactly. So a project manager with high EQ can really build trust and rapport with their team. They can motivate people to do their best work, and they can resolve conflicts constructively. It's about empathy, self-awareness, and the ability to communicate effectively, even in those challenging situations.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely seeing how EQ is a superpower. in project management thing. Speaking of communication, the book actually goes into detail about, different communication channels and methods. It even provides this helpful communication model. So can you maybe give us some key takeaways for the listener, especially since communication styles can vary so much from person to person?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest takeaway is there's no one-size-fits-all approach to communication. You need to tailor your message to your audience. So some stakeholders might prefer detailed reports, while others might respond better to like a quick phone call or a face-to-face conversation. You know, it's about understanding your audience and choosing the most effective way to communicate with them. Also, you need to be mindful of potential communication blockers, right? Like
Yeah.
cultural differences, jargon, or even just personality clashes. These can really distort your message and lead to misunderstandings.
Right. Like if you're working with a team that's spread across different time zones, you need to be really mindful of scheduling meetings,
Hmm.
and making sure that everyone has access to the information that they need. And even within a team, you might have, some people who are very direct communicators and others who are more subtle. So it's about being sensitive to those differences. Yeah.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of active listening. It's not just about getting your message across. It's about making sure you understand the other person's perspective. So ask clarifying questions, summarize what you've heard, and just be open to feedback.
Okay, so communication is clearly a crucial skill for any project manager. Now, let's talk about decision making. That's another big theme in the book. It emphasizes the importance of knowing when to involve higher authority. So, why is that so crucial?
So project managers often face situations where they don't have the authority to make a certain decision. Forcing the issue can lead to delays, conflicts, or even project derailment. So knowing when to escalate to a sponsor or steering committee is it's crucial for a smooth project execution.
So, it's like knowing when to ask for help, right? The book is a great example of this with a toll automation project where the project manager realized they couldn't unilaterally decide to eliminate toll collector jobs.
That's a perfect illustration. So in that scenario, the project manager recognized that the decision had significant implications beyond their authority. So they involved the highway superintendent to try to find a solution. It's about understanding the political landscape, anticipating potential pushback, and navigating those challenges strategically.
Okay, so it's not just about making decisions in a vacuum. It's about being aware of the bigger picture and knowing when to bring in other stakeholders. Now, let's tackle one last practical skill before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, and that's risk management. We talked about this earlier in the context of the holiday party, but the book outlines different types of risk responses, right? Avoid, mitigate, transfer, and accept. So, can you give the listener some concrete examples of these in action?
Absolutely. So let's say you're managing a construction project and there's a risk of flooding in a particular area.
Mhm.
To avoid that risk, you might choose to build on higher ground, right? That's a proactive way to like eliminate the threat altogether.
So, avoid is like taking a detour to bypass a roadblock. You're basically changing course to like completely steer clear of the risk.
Exactly. So now let's say there's a risk of delays in a software development project due to a shortage of skilled programmers. To mitigate that risk, you might invest in training for your existing team, hire additional developers, or even outsource some of the work. So those actions would really reduce the likelihood or the impact of the delay.
So, mitigate is like putting on a raincoat. You're not eliminating the rain, but you're protecting yourself from its full impact.
Perfect. Now let's look at transfer. Imagine you're planning a large outdoor event and there's a risk of cancellation due to bad weather, right? You might transfer that risk by purchasing event insurance. So this shifts the financial burden of the risk to the insurance company.
So, transfer is like sharing the umbrella. You're still exposed to the rain, but you're not getting completely soaked.
Exactly. And then finally, we have accept. Sometimes, you know, the cost or the effort of avoiding, mitigating, or transferring a risk, it just outweighs the potential benefits. So in those cases, you might choose to simply accept the risk, acknowledging its existence, but not taking any specific actions to address it.
So, accept is like deciding to dance in the rain. You're basically embracing the risk and accepting the consequences, good or bad.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to risk response. The best approach is really the one that makes the most sense for your specific situation.
Okay, I'm really starting to appreciate the nuances of risk management now. So it's not just about being risk averse. It's about making calculated decisions based on the likelihood and impact of each risk. And I love how these examples really make it so much clearer, like how to actually apply these concepts in real world situations. So I feel like I'm already getting like a toolbox of strategies that I can use. We're almost out of time for this part of our deep dive, but I'm already hooked. I can't wait to keep exploring these ideas and see what other insights we can uncover.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered some of the, I guess, foundational elements of project management, like constraints, risk, and those core skills that every project manager um, needs. Now, one thing that really resonated with me was the whole concept of tailoring, the idea that there's no one size fits all approach. So how do we figure out the best fit for our specific needs?
Think of tailoring like customizing your project management approach like you would a suit. You wouldn't wear a heavy winter suit to a
Sure.
summer wedding.
Right.
Similarly, you wouldn't use a rigid waterfall methodology for a project that requires a lot of agility and flexibility.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So the book uses the example of a company choosing between a predictive and adaptive approach for developing a CT scanner. So what factors might guide their decision there?
A lot depends on the nature of the project itself. So if you're building something highly innovative or complex where the requirements might change along the way, an adaptive approach makes more sense. It allows you to be uh, more iterative, incorporating feedback and adjusting course as needed. But if you're working on something more straightforward, with clear upfront requirements, a predictive approach might be more efficient.
So it's about understanding the level of like uncertainty involved. If there are a lot of unknowns, you need to be more adaptable. But if things are pretty well defined, you can be more predictive.
Precisely. Yeah. But it goes beyond just the product or service that you're creating. The book also mentions considering stakeholders, deadlines, and even the overall company culture when tailoring your approach.
Okay, so it's kind of a multifaceted decision. Can you give our listeners some specific cheat codes, so to speak, for tailoring based on those criteria?
Absolutely. Let's start with stakeholders. If you've got engaged product owners, who are actively involved in defining and prioritizing requirements, an adaptive method might be a good fit, because it allows for those collaboration and feedback loops.
So if your stakeholders are like all in and ready to roll up their sleeves, adaptive could be the way to go.
Precisely. Now let's look at deadlines. If you're facing a tight deadline, adaptive methods can be your friend because they allow for early deliverables and incremental progress.
So if the clock is ticking, adaptive can help you stay on track without sacrificing, quality.
Exactly. Finally, consider your organizational culture. Does your company value self-management and empowerment, or does it prefer a more top-down hierarchical approach that can really heavily influence your choice of project management methodology?
So if your company is all about agility and innovation, adaptive might be a natural fit, but if it's more traditional and process-driven, predictive could be a better choice.
Exactly. Tailoring is all about finding the best fit for your context. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about what works best for you and your project.
This is so valuable. I love how the book takes these concepts and makes them really accessible and actionable, even for someone who's not taking the CAPM exam.
That's the beauty of project management. These principles are universally applicable. Whether you're leading a team at work, planning family vacation, or even just tackling a DIY project at home, these ideas can really help you stay, organized, focused, and ultimately successful.
Speaking of DIY projects, I'm already thinking about how I can apply some of these risk management strategies to my next home renovation.
Hmm.
I'm notorious for like underestimating the time and budget required for those kinds of
Oh,
things.
for sure.
Yeah.
That raises an important question for our listener. What are some areas in your own life where you could benefit from applying these project management principles? Maybe it's planning a big event, launching a new business venture, or even just getting your finances in order. The possibilities are endless.
I love that. So it's kind of a call to action for the listener to start thinking about how these concepts can be applied in their own unique way. It's not just about passing an exam. It's about becoming a more effective and organized individual, in all aspects of life. So let's dive a little deeper into one of the core performance domains that's highlighted in the CAPM materials, and that's the planning performance domain.
This is where the magic really starts to happen. So the planning performance domain, as described in the PMUOK guide, really focuses on how a project manager organizes, elaborates, and coordinates all the work that's involved throughout the entire project lifecycle. It's like um, it's like setting the stage for success by crafting a blueprint that outlines everything. You know, the goals, the boundaries, the timeline, the budget, the resources, everything.
Okay, so it's like creating a roadmap, making sure everyone's on the same page right from the very beginning. Because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I've definitely been part of projects where it felt like, we were all kind of heading in different directions. Not fun.
Yeah, it can be a recipe for disaster, for sure.
Yeah.
Without a well-defined plan, a project can easily veer off course,
Yeah.
leading to delays, budget blowouts, and just a whole lot of frustration for everyone involved.
Okay, yeah, I'm convinced. So walk us through I guess the key steps that are involved in this planning process. Where do we even begin?
So the book outlines a series of critical steps, starting with gathering requirements. So this involves understanding the needs and expectations of all the stakeholders that are involved, as well as the specific objectives and goals of the project itself.
Okay. So right from the get-go, communication and stakeholder engagement are crucial. We need to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're actually, trying to achieve.
Absolutely. The next step is defining the scope. Think of this as drawing a clear boundary around what the project will include, and just as importantly, what it will not include.
Okay, yeah. I can see how that would be important for preventing something called scope creep, right? So that's when things start like getting added to the project without proper evaluation or approval.
Yeah, scope creep can be a real project killer. It can lead to those blown budgets, missed deadlines, and just a whole lot of stress. So once you've defined the scope, the next step is to create something called a work down structure, or WBS for short.
Okay, that sounds a bit technical. Break it down for us. What exactly is a WBS and how does it actually help?
Imagine you're tackling like a massive home renovation project, right? You've got a whole house to remodel, and it just feels, totally overwhelming. So a WBS is like it's like breaking that big project down into smaller, more manageable chunks. It's like creating a detailed checklist for each room, so you don't miss anything.
Okay, so instead of having one giant task called like renovate the house, you would have smaller tasks like, demo the kitchen, install new cabinets, paint the walls, and so on.
Exactly. And you can keep breaking breaking those tasks down even further. So install new cabinets could become order cabinets, remove old cabinets, assemble cabinets, and install cabinets.
I'm starting to see how this would make like a massive project feel less daunting. It's like
Yeah.
taking a big bite and chewing it one piece at a time.
Precisely. So a well-structured WBS makes it easier to estimate the time, cost, and resources required for each part of the project. It also helps to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks.
I love how organized and systematic this whole process is. It's like taking all the chaos of a big project and putting it into like neat little boxes. So we've gathered requirements, defined the scope, created a WBS. What's next on our planning checklist?
Now it's time to develop the schedule. So this involves figuring out the sequence of activities, estimating how long each activity will take, and then assigning resources to those activities. This is where tools like Gantt charts come in handy.
Ah, yes, Gantt charts. Those are those colorful bar charts that like project managers are always using, right?
Exactly. So they're incredibly useful for visualizing dependencies between tasks. So meaning, which tasks need to be completed before others can start. They also help you to identify the critical path of the project.
Okay, critical path sounds important. What's that all about?
So the critical path is the sequence of activities that determines the shortest possible duration of the entire project. It's the longest path through your project network diagram. And any delays on that critical path will directly impact the project completion date.
So it's like the backbone of the project schedule, the path that absolutely cannot be delayed if you want to stay on track. I'm already thinking of a few tasks in my current project that would definitely fall on that critical path.
It's an essential concept to understand, for
Yeah.
sure. And a Gantt chart can really help you visualize it
Sure.
clearly. And then along with the schedule, we also need to develop a budget. So this involves estimating the costs associated with each activity and resource, considering things like labor rates, material costs, equipment rentals, and any other expenses that might pop up during the project.
Yeah. I'm starting to see how all these planning elements are kind of interconnected, right? So the scope influences the schedule influences the budget, and so on.
Exactly. It's a complex puzzle, but a well-crafted plan really helps you fit all those pieces together smoothly.
I'm also thinking about risk management again. We need to factor that into the planning process, right?
Absolutely. Remember, we don't just want to hope for the best. We want to be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah.
So developing a risk management plan is a crucial step in the planning process. It involves identifying, potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then developing strategies to either mitigate those risks or, have a backup plan in place just in case.
Okay, so it's like building in some shock absorbers to handle those bumps in the road. So far, we've covered gathering requirements, defining the scope, creating a WBS, developing a schedule, crafting a budget, and incorporating risk management. Is there anything else we need to consider in our project plan? This is a lot to keep track of.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
The book also emphasizes the importance of establishing clear communication channels and protocols. So this means identifying your key stakeholders, figuring out their communication needs, and then setting up a system for sharing information effectively throughout the project.
Right, because a breakdown in communication can lead to all sorts of problems, right? Like delays,
Yeah.
misunderstandings, conflicts. It's like trying to build a house without blueprints. Everyone is working on different parts, but no one knows how they fit together.
Exactly. A well-defined communication plan can really prevent those kinds of headaches. It
Yeah.
ensures that everyone has the information they need when they need it in a format that they understand. It's about transparency, clarity, and just keeping everyone in the loop.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, right? The requirements, the scope, the WBS, the schedule, the budget, the risk management plan, and now the communication plan. It's a really comprehensive and integrated approach to like setting the project up for success.
That's the essence of the planning performance domain for sure. It's
Ooh.
about laying a strong foundation by thinking through all the essential elements from the high level objectives down to the nitty gritty details. But remember, even the best laid plans can go astray.
Oh, I know that all too well.
Yeah.
So, what are some common pitfalls to watch out for during this planning phase, and how can we avoid them?
One common pitfall is failing to properly engage stakeholders. It's easy to get so focused on the technical aspects of the plan that you forget about the people who are involved. So make sure you involve your stakeholders early and often,
Hmm.
get their input, address their concerns, and just keep them informed throughout the planning process.
Yeah, that makes sense. If people feel like they're not being heard, they're less likely to be supportive of the plan.
Exactly. Another pitfall is being too rigid in your planning. Remember, change is inevitable in projects. So build some flexibility into your plan, and be prepared to adjust course as needed. Don't be afraid to revisit your assumptions, reevaluate your priorities, and just make changes if the situation demands it.
So it's about finding that balance between having a solid plan and being adaptable enough to handle, the unexpected.
Precisely. And finally, don't underestimate the importance of um, documenting your plan. A written plan really serves as a reference point for everyone's involved, ensuring clarity and consistency throughout the project.
It's like having a shared understanding of the game plan, so everyone knows, their role and how it contributes to that overall goal. Okay, well, I'm feeling much more confident in my planning abilities now.
That's great to hear.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's delve a little deeper into some of the nuances of planning.
Sounds good to me. What specific aspects are you curious about?
Well, the book mentions something called a baseline. So, what exactly is that, and how does it fit into this whole planning process?
So a baseline is essentially a snapshot of the approved plan at a specific point in time. It's like a benchmark that you can use to measure progress and identify any deviations from the plan. So typically a project will have three main baselines: the scope baseline, the schedule baseline, and the cost baseline.
Okay, so it's like capturing the agreed upon plan in its initial state before any changes or adjustments are made.
Precisely. So these baselines really serve as a reference point for monitoring and controlling the project. If you notice that your actual progress is deviating, significantly from that baseline, that's a signal that something needs to be addressed.
It's like a warning system that alerts you if the project's kind of, veering off course.
Yeah, I can see how that would be incredibly helpful for staying on track. But we know that change is inevitable in projects. So how do we handle changes without, like, throwing the entire plan out the window? That's where change control comes in. So a robust change control process is crucial for maintaining control of the project and ensuring that any changes are carefully evaluated and managed. Uncontrolled changes can lead to the dreaded scope schedule delays and budget overruns.
So it's about having like a system for handling those inevitable change requests. But how do we strike a balance between being flexible and maintaining control?
That's the key challenge, right? So you want to be responsive to stakeholder needs and adapt to changing circumstances, but you also need to maintain the integrity of that project plan and ensure that the project stays aligned with those original goals and objectives.
Yeah. It sounds like a delicate dance between, responsiveness and discipline. So can you walk us through like a typical change control process? What steps are actually involved?
Sure. A typical change control process might look something like this. First, a change request is submitted, outlining the proposed change and its
Yeah.
rationale, right? Then the change is evaluated for its impact on the scope, schedule, budget, and quality of the project. Next, that change request is reviewed and approved or rejected by the appropriate stakeholders, often a change control board or a designated project sponsor. If it's approved, then the project plan is updated to reflect the change, and finally, the change is communicated to the team and all the relevant stakeholders.
Okay, so it's a structured process that ensures that all changes are carefully considered and approved before they're actually implemented.
Exactly, and it's important to remember that even small changes can have a ripple effect throughout the project. That's why having a clear and consistent change control process is so important for maintaining that project integrity and preventing chaos.
This is making me think about a project I worked on where we kept like adding new features without properly assessing their impact. It ended up being a complete nightmare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a classic example of what can happen when change control is lacking.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new ideas, but it's crucial to evaluate their impact on the overall project before you just dive in head first.
Okay, lesson learned. From now on, change control is my new best friend. But let's move on to another crucial aspect of planning, and that's time and resource estimation. This is where things can get really tricky, right? So, how do we ensure that our estimates are accurate and realistic?
Accurate estimation is one of the biggest challenges in project management. Underestimate, and you risk running out of time or budget. Overestimate, and you might waste resources or lose out on opportunities. So the book highlights three uh, common methods for estimating time and resources: analogous estimation, parametric estimation, and three-point estimation.
Okay, those are some big words. Can you break those down for us?
Absolutely. So analogous estimation is basically using historical data from similar projects to estimate the time and resources required for the current project. It's a relatively quick and easy method,
Yeah.
but it really relies on the assumption that the current project is truly similar to the past projects you're using for comparison.
So if you've got a good track record of, completing similar projects, you can use that data to kind of make educated guesses about how long this new project will take.
Exactly. Now let's look at parametric estimation. So this method uses a statistical relationship between historical data and other variables like project size or complexity to estimate the time and resources required. It's a more sophisticated approach than analogous estimation, but it requires more data and more analysis.
Okay. So if you have access to, detailed historical data and you're working on a more complex project where you can identify specific variables that might impact the timeline or the budget, then parametric estimation could provide like more accurate estimates.
Precisely. And then finally, we have three-point estimation. This method involves estimating three values for each activity. So the optimistic estimate, the best case scenario, the pessimistic estimate, the worst case scenario, and then the most likely estimate. And then you use those three values to calculate a weighted average, which gives you a more realistic range for the time and resources required.
So three-point estimation is like hedging your bets, taking into account the full spectrum of possibilities. It's like saying, okay, this task could take anywhere from, 5 days to 15 days, but realistically, it's probably going to take about 8 days.
That's a great way to think about it. It helps to account for uncertainty and avoid setting unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, these are all really helpful techniques. I'm already thinking about how I can apply them to my own projects to improve my planning accuracy. But there's one more thing I'm kind of curious about. The book differentiates between work time and elapsed time. So what's the difference, and why does it matter?
That's a great question. So work time, also known as
Yes.
effort, is the actual number of hours it takes to complete a task. Elapsed time, also known as duration, is the calendar time it takes, taking into account factors like weekends, holidays, resource availability, and dependencies between tasks.
Okay, so work time is like the pure work effort, whereas elapsed time is the real world time it takes to get something done, considering all those external factors that might impact the schedule.
Exactly. So it's crucial to understand this distinction when you're estimating project schedules. Failing to account for elapsed time can lead to unrealistic timelines and missed deadlines.
This reminds me of a project where we underestimated the elapsed time needed to complete a task because we didn't factor in a key team member's vacation time. It ended up like totally throwing off the entire project schedule.
Oh, for sure. That's a classic pitfall.
Yeah, yeah.
It's important to consider all the factors that can influence elapsed time, including
Yeah.
resource availability, holidays, dependencies between tasks, and just any external constraints that might impact the timeline.
Okay. So it's not just about how long a task should take. It's about how long it will take, in the real world, considering all those real world factors.
Precisely. Accurate elapsed time estimation is really essential for creating realistic project schedules and setting achievable deadlines.
This is so helpful. I'm already feeling much more equipped to handle the complexities of time and resource estimation
Hmm.
now. So, what other planning insights can we uncover from the CPM materials? This is like treasure trove of project management wisdom.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but there are always more nuggets to unearth. What specifically piques your curiosity?
Well, earlier you mentioned something called float when we were talking about the critical path. So, can you explain what that is and why it's important for project planning?
So float, also known as slack, is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without impacting the project completion date. So activities on that critical path have zero float, meaning any delay will directly push back the project end date. But non-critical path activities, those have some degree of flexibility, allowing for some delays without derailing the entire project.
So float is like a buffer,
Yeah.
giving us some wiggle room in the schedule.
Exactly. Understanding float is important for effective project scheduling because it allows you to prioritize activities, allocate resources strategically, and just make adjustments to the schedule without impacting that overall timeline.
This reminds me of a software development project where we had a non-critical path activity, writing documentation, that got delayed because it had some float. We were able to like shift resources around and keep the project on track without impacting that critical path.
That's a great example of how understanding float can give you that flexibility in managing the project schedule. So by identifying activities with float, you can accommodate unexpected delays, adjust task priorities, and just keep the project moving forward without jeopardizing the end goal.
Okay, so float is like like a safety net, giving
Yeah.
us some breathing room in the schedule and allowing us to adapt to those those inevitable hiccups that come up in almost every project.
Precisely. It's a valuable tool for effective planning and scheduling. But remember, even with float, it's important to stay vigilant and and monitor progress closely. Unforeseen delays can accumulate, and what might seem like a minor slip can snowball into a major problem if it's not addressed promptly.
That's a great point. It's all about staying proactive and keeping a close eye on that big picture, even when things are moving along smoothly. So we've talked about baselines, change control, time, and resource estimation, and float. Is there anything else we need to know about this critical planning phase before we move on to the excitement of project execution?
We've covered the essentials, but there's one more planning element that deserves attention. And that's developing a solid project charter. Think of this as the project's official birth certificate, authorizing its existence and outlining its purpose.
Okay, so it's like the foundational document that sets the stage for everything that follows.
Exactly. The project charter formally authorizes the project and outlines its key objectives, scope, and stakeholders. It serves as a high-level overview that guides the planning process and helps ensure alignment with organizational goals.
So it's like a mini manifesto,
Right.
declaring the project's purpose and guiding principles.
That's a great way to put it. The project charter really sets the stage for success and helps secure buy-in from stakeholders.
Yeah. It's like getting everyone on board with a shared vision for the project, making sure everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction.
Precisely. A well-crafted project charter is a powerful tool for alignment, clarity, and accountability.
Okay, I'm convinced. From now on, every project I start will have a project charter, no matter how small. It's like laying a strong foundation for success.
That's the spirit. A
Yeah.
solid plan is the bedrock of any successful project. Now, are you ready to dive into the world of project execution and see how all this planning comes to life?
Absolutely. I'm eager to explore that dynamic phase where ideas actually become reality, but also where challenges and surprises kind of lurk around every corner. So let's get into it. All right. So we spent quite a bit of time in the world of project planning, which is like obviously super important to set the stage for success.
Right.
But now let's kind of shift gears and talk about I guess, the more exciting part,
Yeah.
project execution.
That's right.
This is where all that like careful planning and preparation rubber meets the road.
It is, yeah, this is where the vision starts to take shape, but it's also where things can go, sideways if you're not prepared for the inevitable bumps in the road.
Yeah.
So effective execution requires a blend of leadership, communication, teamwork, problem solving,
Yeah.
and definitely quick thinking.
So it's not just about sticking to the plan, like no matter what. It's
Yeah.
about adapting to those unexpected challenges and making things happen even when the going gets tough.
Exactly. Project execution involves a constant cycle of monitoring, controlling, and adjusting to make sure that the project stays on track and delivers those desired outcomes,
Right.
even when curveballs come your way.
That reminds me of a marketing campaign that I worked on where we had to like completely change our strategy midway through because the market just took this like unexpected turn.
Yeah.
It was stressful, but it also taught me the importance of being flexible and adaptable, during execution.
That's a perfect example. Effective project execution requires a willingness to um, embrace change, make tough decisions on the fly, and keep the team, motivated and focused on the goal, even when things get chaotic.
Okay, so what are some key things to keep in mind, during project execution to help things run a little bit smoother?
So the book highlights several important aspects,
Hmm.
and it starts with managing those inevitable issues that pop up. So issues are those unexpected events or problems that can suddenly arise during the project and just throw a wrench in your plans,
Yeah.
impacting the scope, the schedule, the budget, or even the quality of the final deliverable.
So it's like having a fire extinguisher handy just in case something unexpected ignites and threatens to burn down the whole project.
Right.
You need to be prepared to like put out those fires quickly and effectively.
That's a great way to put it. So effective issue management involves quickly identifying the issue, documenting it, analyzing its potential impact, developing a solution or workaround,
Right.
and then tracking the resolution to make sure it doesn't, come back to haunt you.
Yeah, that makes me think about a construction project I was involved in where we ran into a major issue with a subcontractor who was just like not meeting their deadlines.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to like quickly assess the impact, find a replacement, and adjust the schedule to to minimize the damage. It
Right,
was
yeah.
all hands on deck.
That's a great example of effective issue management in action. By having a clear process for, dealing with those unexpected problems, you can minimize their impact and prevent them from derailing the entire project. So it's about being proactive and having a plan, but also being flexible enough to adapt to whatever challenges arise.
Right, because sometimes the best laid plans get thrown out the window when reality hits. So
Absolutely.
it's about being prepared, but also, being able to think on your feet and make those tough calls when necessary.
Exactly. Now let's talk about another biggie, managing changes. So change is a constant companion in project management, and it's essential to have a robust process for evaluating, approving, and implementing changes to the project's scope, schedule, budget, or quality.
Because let's be honest, it's rare that a project goes like from start to finish without at least a few changes along the way.
For sure.
New information emerges, priorities shift, and sometimes, stakeholders simply change their minds.
Yeah, that's the reality of project management. So effective change management is about being able to adapt to those new requirements and requests without letting the project you know spiral out of control or stray too far from its original goals.
It's like having a solid container for those changes so they don't like spill out everywhere and create a big mess.
Precisely. So effective change management involves a formal process for submitting change requests, carefully evaluating their impact, obtaining approval from the appropriate stakeholders, updating the project plan, and then clearly communicating those changes to the team so that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, this reminds me of a software development project I worked on where a stakeholder requested this like major functionality change late in the game.
Oh yeah.
And we had to like carefully assess the impact of the change, negotiate a revised scope and timeline, and then adjust the project plan accordingly.
Right.
It's like a delicate balancing act.
It is a delicate balancing act, but that's a great example of how a solid change management process can really save the day.
Right.
By having a clear procedure in place, you can ensure that changes are thoroughly considered, properly vetted, and smoothly implemented without throwing the entire project off track.
Okay, so it's like having a set of guardrails, to keep the project from like veering off into the ditch, even when you're navigating those unexpected twists and turns.
Exactly. Now, along with managing issues and changes, what other aspects of project execution should we be paying close attention to?
Well, I know that monitoring and controlling project work are like ongoing processes throughout that entire project life cycle. So it's about keeping your finger on the pulse of the project, checking progress against the plan, identifying any deviations, and then taking corrective action to keep things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's like being the captain of a ship, constantly checking your instruments, making sure you're on course, and adjusting the sails as needed to navigate those changing winds and currents.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
And just like a captain has a whole array of tools and instruments, project managers also have a variety of techniques at their disposal for monitoring and controlling project work. So we're talking regular status meetings, performance reports, earned value analysis, variance analysis, trend analysis, and forecasting.
Okay, that sounds like a lot to juggle.
Yeah,
Can you give our listener like a quick overview of each of those techniques and how they can help keep a project on course?
absolutely. So regular status meetings are like team huddles,
Yeah.
where everyone comes together to discuss, you know, progress, identify any roadblocks, and make decisions about how to overcome those challenges. It's a chance to celebrate wins, troubleshoot problems, and make sure that everyone is aligned. And then performance reports, those provide a written summary of project status,
Right.
including key metrics like schedule performance, cost performance, and risk status. So think of it as a project health checkup.
So it's like having a dashboard that shows you like all the vital signs of the project, so
Yeah,
you can
okay.
quickly spot any areas that need attention.
Exactly. Now, earned value analysis is a more sophisticated technique for measuring project performance against the plan, taking into account the value of the work completed.
Okay.
So it helps you answer the question: are we getting the bang for our buck?
So it's not just about like tracking whether tasks are complete. It's about like measuring the actual value that they're delivering to the project.
Precisely. And then variance analysis involves comparing uh, actual performance to the planned performance, identifying any deviations, and then digging deeper to understand what's causing those variances.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out why we're off track, not just that we're off track.
So it's like detective work,
Yes,
looking for like clues to explain those unexpected twists and turns in the project journey.
exactly. And then trend analysis involves tracking project performance over time to identify patterns that can help you predict future performance.
Okay.
So are things generally trending in a positive direction, or are there warning signs that need to be addressed?
So it's like looking for those early indicators that
Yeah,
can help you anticipate, potential problems before they become like major crises.
precisely. And then finally, forecasting involves using historical data and current trends to make educated guesses about future project outcomes, such as the estimated completion date or the final project uh, costs.
Okay, so it's not about like gazing into a crystal ball,
Right.
but it is about using, data and experience to make, informed predictions about what the future holds for the project.
Exactly. So by using these monitoring and controlling techniques effectively, you gain valuable insights into project progress. You identify potential problems early on, and you take corrective actions to keep that project sailing smoothly toward its destination.
Okay, I'm really starting to see the importance of having a solid monitoring and controlling system in place. It's like
Yeah.
having a reliable navigation system that helps you, stay on course even when the seas get rough. Now, there's one aspect of project management that I've always found a little bit intimidating, and that's procurement.
Okay.
It just sounds so like official and complex. So, can you kind of demystify it for us?
So procurement simply means acquiring goods and services uh, from external vendors or suppliers to to support the project.
Okay.
So it's like going shopping for your project, but on a larger, more formal scale.
So it's about going like outside the organization
Yes.
to get those those specialized things you need to make the project happen.
Exactly. It could involve anything from sourcing raw materials for a manufacturing project
Hmm.
to hiring a consultant for specific expertise to procuring software licenses for your team.
Okay, I'm starting to see how procurement touches almost every project in some way.
It does.
But I imagine it can be a tricky process to manage effectively.
It can.
So, what are some key things to keep in mind?
So procurement can definitely be complex, involving a lot of moving parts. So it typically involves identifying potential vendors, soliciting bids or proposals, evaluating those proposals carefully, negotiating contracts, managing vendor performance, and making sure everything is delivered on time and meets those quality standards.
So it's not just about, finding the cheapest option. It's
Mhm.
about finding the best overall value, for the project, considering factors like quality, reliability, and the vendor's track record.
Precisely, and it's important to establish those clear communication channels with your vendors, just like you do with your internal team members. Make sure everyone understands the expectations, the timelines, and the deliverables.
That makes sense because a breakdown in communication with a vendor can be just as disruptive as a breakdown, within the project team.
Absolutely. Now I know the contracts play a big role in procurement. So can you talk a little bit about why they're so important and what we should be paying attention to.
Well, I know that contracts are, they're legally binding agreements
Mhm.
that outline the terms and conditions of the procurement, and they protect both the buyer, so the project team, and the seller, the vendor, by clearly defining, everyone's obligations, the payment terms, the deliverables, the timelines, and so on.
Exactly. It's like having a detailed roadmap for the relationship, outlining everyone's responsibilities and expectations.
Yeah, and I imagine this is especially important, when you're dealing with those large, complex procurements.
Absolutely. A well-written contract can prevent misunderstandings, disputes, and potential legal issues down the road.
Okay, so it's not just about like hammering out the price. It's about making sure that all those details are clearly spelled out and agreed upon,
Hmm.
by both parties. Now, are all contracts created equal? Are
Okay.
there different types that we should be aware of?
That's a great question. There are several common types of contracts that are used in procurement,
Okay.
each with its own advantages and disadvantages.
Can you walk us through a few of the most common types?
So fixed price contracts, as the name suggests, have a set price for the goods or services being procured.
Okay.
So these are great when the scope of work is well defined and there's minimal risk of changes.
So it's like buying a car off the lot. The price is the price, and there's no room for negotiation.
That's a good analogy. Now, cost reimbursable contracts reimburse the vendor for their actual costs plus a fee or a profit margin.
Okay.
So these are better suited for projects where the scope is uncertain or there's a higher risk of changes along the way.
So it's like hiring a contractor to remodel your kitchen. You might have a general idea of what you want, but the final cost will depend on the specific materials and labor and any unexpected issues that arise during the renovation.
Precisely. And then finally, we have time and materials contracts.
Okay.
These are kind of a hybrid of fixed price and cost reimbursable contracts
Mm.
where the vendor is paid for their time and materials used, plus a markup for profit.
So it's like paying a mechanic to fix your car. They charge you for the parts and their labor, plus a markup for their expertise.
Exactly. So time and materials contracts, those offer more flexibility than fixed price contracts, but
Okay.
they also carry more risk because that final cost can vary, depending on how much time and materials are ultimately needed.
Okay, so it's like choosing the right tool for the job.
Right.
You need to assess the nature of the procurement, the level of risk involved, and the relationship with the vendor to determine which type of contract is the best fit.
Exactly. And once you've determined the contract type, the bidding process begins.
Ah, yes, the bidding process. Tell us more about how that works.
So it typically starts with preparing a request for proposal, or RFP.
Okay.
So this document outlines the project's requirements and invites vendors to submit their proposals detailing how they would meet those requirements, their proposed costs, and their timeline.
So it's like casting a wide net to see who's out there and who can offer the best solution for the project's needs.
Precisely. Once you've received those proposals, it's time to carefully evaluate them based on predefined criteria such as price, quality, experience, and so on.
So it's like judging a competition where each vendor is trying to like win your business
Yes.
by presenting the most compelling case.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And then finally, you select the winning bid and negotiate the contract, making sure all those details are clearly spelled out and agreed upon by both parties.
Okay, so it's a multi-step process that requires careful planning, communication and evaluation to ensure that you choose the best vendor for the job.
Exactly. But even after you've selected a vendor and signed a contract, the work isn't done. You need to actively manage that vendor relationship, monitor their performance, and address any issues that arise to ensure that they deliver on their promises.
It's like being a conductor, making sure all the different instruments are playing in harmony to create a beautiful symphony.
I love that analogy. So, uh, Effective procurement involves orchestrating this complex interplay of, of vendors, contracts, deliverables, and timelines to ensure that the project has the necessary resources to succeed.
Okay, so we've talked about managing issues, handling changes, monitoring and controlling progress, and navigating the world of procurement.
Right.
So, what other nuggets of wisdom can we unearth from these HPM materials to help us successfully execute our projects?
Let's talk about a crucial decision that project managers often face, and that's make or buy.
Okay, so this is about deciding whether to like produce goods or services, in-house
Yes.
or to outsource them to external vendors, right? It's like choosing between, baking a cake from scratch or buying one from the bakery.
Exactly. So make or buy analysis involves weighing the pros and cons of each option, considering factors like cost, quality, time, expertise, risk, and control.
So it's about strategically deciding, what we do ourselves and what we delegate to others based on what makes the most sense for the project.
Precisely. Sometimes it's more cost effective or efficient to outsource a particular task or service. Other times it makes more sense to keep things in house to maintain greater control over quality or timelines.
Yeah, this makes me think about a software development project I worked on where we had to decide whether to develop a particular module, ourselves or outsource it to a vendor.
Right.
And ultimately, we decided to outsource it because it was more cost effective and it allowed our internal team to kind of focus on other critical aspects of the project.
That's a great example of how a thoughtful make or buy analysis can lead to a more strategic allocation of resources and a more successful project outcome.
Okay, so it's about making those smart decisions that align with the project's, overall goals and constraints.
Exactly.
Now, as we kind of approach the finish line of our deep dive into project management, is there anything else we should keep in mind? As we guide our projects towards completion, what does like a successful project closure, look like?
So project closure is the final phase of the project lifecycle.
Okay.
It's about tying up loose ends, celebrating successes, and ensuring a smooth handover of the deliverables to the stakeholders.
So it's not just about finishing the work.
Right.
It's about wrapping things up in a way that maximizes value and leaves everyone feeling good about the journey.
Exactly. So effective project closure involves several key steps, including obtaining final acceptance of the deliverables from the stakeholders, documenting lessons learned, archiving project documentation, releasing resources, and celebrating the team's accomplishments.
Okay, so let's break those down a bit.
Sure.
Why is obtaining final acceptance from the stakeholders so important?
Think of it as getting a seal of approval.
Okay.
You want to make sure that the stakeholders are, satisfied with that final product or service,
Yeah.
and that it meets their expectations. So it's about closing the loop and ensuring that that everyone is on the same page.
Right, because if the stakeholders aren't happy, then all that hard work might feel like it was for nothing.
Exactly. Now, documenting lessons learned is a
Yeah.
crucial step that often gets overlooked. It's about taking the time to reflect on what went well, what didn't go so well, and what we can what we can do better next time.
Right.
It's about capturing that valuable knowledge and experience so that we can continuously improve our project management practices.
Yeah, it's like having a debriefing after a mission where the team kind of gathers to share insights and identify areas for improvement. So it's about turning those experiences into valuable lessons for the future.
Precisely. And then there's archiving project documentation.
Okay.
So this is about organizing and storing all those important project-related documents in a secure and accessible location for future reference.
Yeah.
It's like creating a library of project knowledge that could be used for audits, future projects, or just simply to refresh our memories down the road.
Yeah, it's like creating a time capsule of the project.
Hmm.
Capturing all the important details for posterity.
That's a great way to put it. And then, of course, we need to release resources, meaning formally releasing team members and any other resources that were allocated to the project,
Yeah, okay.
making them available for other assignments.
Right, because projects have a beginning and an end,
Yeah,
and people need to, move on to their next adventures.
exactly. And finally, let's not forget to celebrate the team's accomplishments.
Yes.
Project work can be challenging, so it's important to take a moment to acknowledge everyone's hard work, dedication, and contributions to the project's success.
It's about recognizing those wins, big and small, and fostering a sense of camaraderie and accomplishment within the team.
Precisely, a little celebration goes a long way in boosting morale and creating a positive project experience.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into project management.
We have.
We've explored the importance of planning, the dynamics of execution, the complexities of procurement, and the significance of closing projects effectively.
Right.
So I feel like I've gained a whole new toolbox of knowledge and strategies that I can that I can use to tackle my next project with confidence.
That's great to hear. Remember, project management is a journey of continuous learning and improvement. So the more you practice these principles and techniques, the more comfortable and effective you'll become.
It's like any skill, the more you use it, the sharper it gets.
Absolutely.
And the beauty of project management is that it's not just applicable to work projects.
Right.
These principles can really help you in all aspects of life, from planning a vacation to organizing your finances to achieving your personal goals.
Exactly. It's about breaking down complex challenges, managing resources effectively, and staying focused on that desired outcome.
And most importantly, it's about embracing the journey with all its twists and turns and celebrating those wins along the way.
Well said. I hope this deep dive has empowered you to approach your next project with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence.
I know I certainly feel more equipped to tackle those project challenges head on.
Yeah.
And to our listener, we encourage you to take these insights and apply them to your own unique situation.
Right.
Whether you're leading a team at work, planning a personal project, or simply trying to bring more organization and structure to your life, the principles of project management can really be your secret weapon for success.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep diving deep.